Rising drug prices have been a constant fixture in the news. The absurd prices of some critical medicines have left people with a choice between rent or survival. But that's beginning to change. Mark Cuban's entry into the market with cost-plus drugs has gotten a lot of press, but did you know that there is another option? Today, we're talking with a company that is looking to take on cost-plus with deeper discounts and a larger catalog, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is Chris Brandt here with Sandesh Patel. Welcome to another future podcast. If you could just take a moment and hit that subscribe button because that helps the channel a ton and I would greatly appreciate it. Today we're talking with Satish Srinivasan, CEO of DiRx. DiRx is an online pharmacy that is looking to make prescriptions more affordable. Most importantly, they are pushing the industry to do more for underinsured and uninsured Americans with dependable year-round access to their life-saving medications at a consistent price point. Most recently, they debuted their annual savings plan, which provides customers with access to an unlimited amount of generic prescriptions for as low as $10 to $25 per month. So let's talk with Satish about how they make it all work. Welcome, Satish.
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Sandesh. Thanks for having me.
What you're doing sounds incredibly important. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who struggle with the price of drugs or, getting access. The price of insulin, for example, is just, one of those things. We have EpiPens that just make me crazy because the prices on them, it's really problematic. So I see a lot of challenges in this space. Obviously you did too. Could you talk to me a little bit about why you decided to? I know you come from a long pharmaceutical background, but what was it about what was going on that you said, I got to fix this market and I got to start DiRx?
While you all look at it from what does it cost and how does it burn a hole in the pocket, and for many others that could be an affordability problem, I come at it from the opposite side. I've been in the generic pharmaceutical industry for 25 years. And I know the real cost of these products, how much it takes to make them and all that. And it was pretty baffling to see how something that would cost pennies a tablet would be sold for tens of dollars on the other end. And I realized that it's not so much the cost of the product, but the intermediaries in the distribution system who are adding so much cost. And when that becomes unaffordable, I felt it's time I do something about it.
We see in the news, all these stories about just what strikes me is incredible price gouging from this supply chain that you talk about. Where is that largely happening? I mean, or is it just happening everywhere, and that's why everything's so out of control?
I would say it's happening everywhere, and the fundamental reason it's happening is the whole healthcare system is built around reimbursement. It's gotten so bad that it's disconnected from the real cost of the product. Everything is pegged to an artificial reference price from which people get reimbursed. And so when that reference price is very high, everything stays high, even though the acquisition cost of the product is very low. And the intermediaries benefit by keeping it high. So over the years, they've been pushing it higher and higher and saying, oh, I'm just getting 20% of that, or you get a rebate off of that. But if you inflate it in the first place, anything is going to look better than that.
If I'm just taking 20%. If it's, $1, that's 20 cents. But if it's $10,000, that's a big difference, right?
Exactly.
You mentioned that, your experience is in the generic drug market. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between, sort of the generic drug market and the rest of the market?
So 90% of the prescriptions in the United States are dispensed in the form of generics. What are the other products? These are brands and specialty products. What's the difference? So, there are large, innovator companies like, the Pfizer's, the Bristol Myers Squibb's, all of them, GlaxoSmithKline. They do clinical research and invent new drugs for specific health conditions, and they hold a patent until a certain time period. So until that patent expires, they get to sell the brand. You see all the ads on TV, and, they can charge whatever they determine is the best price. And of course, they need to recover their investment based on all the expensive clinical research. But once the patent expires, that's when the market opens up to generics. What are generics? Generics are exactly bioequivalent versions of those branded products, except the generic companies don't have to do a clinical trial. They just have to prove to the FDA that the formulation that they have come up with behaves exactly the same way. That's why they're called bioequivalent. They got to release the drug, they got to dissolve, they got to be available in the bloodstream at the same pace as that original branded drug. And that's a huge industry. You have several hundreds of generic companies around the world, and the US is the biggest market. And 90% of all prescriptions dispensed in the US are in the form of generic because they're very, very cost effective. And even the insurance industry will push you to a generic once the patent expires.
That's really shocking to me because I didn't realize that it was 90% of the drug market. I mean, because you think about all these drug companies and things like that, you think that's the bulk of what's being sold out there. But are they selling generics as well?
So they do have some divisions which are called established products division, where they do have a few generics, but that's not their mainstay. Once the patent's expired and other competitors come in and drop the price, they move on. But I must tell you, the brands and specialty, why are they still relevant from a healthcare cost perspective, is even though they're only 10% of the prescription volume, they're 85% of the dollars spent on prescriptions by the healthcare system. But until the patent expires, that's the only one you can use. So.
And I think I'm starting to understand the answer to this next question I'm going to ask you a little bit already. But, how do you make these things less expensive? I mean, because obviously there's more to it than just selling generics, right?
Yeah, that's true. So one is you have a proven formula that works. For the brand companies, until they get it approved, they have to come up with so many different iterations. Some of them may be available but not safe, and so on. So they have to go through 300, 400 different molecules before they come up with one that works. So all of that cost and the clinical trial cost is added to that number that they need to recover. But when you come in with a generic, you know exactly what target you're going after. You just have to reproduce the formulation. So that keeps the cost base very low, and that with mass production, makes it even easier.
You're delivering these direct to the consumer, right? And you're an online pharmacy. I got to imagine that's a big part of keeping costs low. Or is it just you're not taking the kind of profits that the other pharmacies do?
It's a bit of everything. As I said earlier, the big drug wholesalers, there are three of them, they're called the big three. They control 94% of generic purchasing. Wow. So remember, I told you there's a high reference price based on which everybody's reimbursed. So they get reimbursed based on that, but their acquisition cost is much lower because there are 6 to 10 generic suppliers for almost any given product. So there's only three of them that control each a third of the market. So if you need their business, they will get you at a very, very low cost of acquisition, but they turn around and charge the maximum reimbursement. So that's how they control. So by skipping that entire piece of the supply chain, I avoid the markup or the inflation that they bring onto the cost. That's number one. Number two is, since most of the system is based on reimbursement, it has to go through a PBM, pharmacy benefit manager. So they add certain costs to the process as well. We try to stay out of that. At least in our consumer model, it's we source direct, we fulfill direct, we stay out of the big three wholesalers, and we stay out of PBMs with a simple cash model that has nothing to do with insurance. So just staying away from the huge inflation of cost that they add itself is a huge saving. We actually pay a slight premium to the generic companies because we can't buy the volumes that the wholesalers would. So we pay them a little premium, but still there's so much of cost addition that these two layers add. Just saving half of that is a lot of money that goes back to the system. So the patients are very happy, and we make a reasonable margin as well.
Just to clarify that point, you pay more for the drugs, but you still manage to sell them for less.
Yes, because I skipped the intermediaries in the chain.
I think that points to a lot of problems in the existing, systems, right? We've heard a lot about, Mark Cuban's cost plus. I mean, he's obviously a marketing machine, so he gets a lot of attention anytime he does something. But you guys have actually been around longer than he has and selling a bigger catalog of prescription medicines at a lower cost. Could you talk a little bit about how that's going? I mean, I got to imagine in some regards, he's doing some of the advertising for you.
That's right. I mean, in a way, as the saying goes, rising tides lift all the boats.
Right.
So I do have a lot of regard for Mr. Cuban. I've been, big fan of Shark Tank. So I do respect him as a businessman. But you're right. We actually launched about, 4-ish months before they made the announcement about their company. So in terms of the model and on a national scale, so there are one or two pharmacies that are very regional, but going on a national scale, we did that first. And we still are the only ones in the whole country with the generic industry DNA. We are the product people. We understand the real cost. That still differentiates us. That being said, how we are also very different is we have not outsourced any of the activities. We have our own nationally licensed pharmacy. We have licenses to ship to all 50 states and DC. And all of our customer service, everything is in-house. So we believe the benefits of all that integration will really add a lot of value as we keep scaling up.
When you mentioned the fact that you're a national pharmacy, I know that like when it comes to healthcare, so much of it is controlled state by state. I've got to imagine like there's a lot of complexity to selling in all 50 states. And not only that, but you did mention, U.S. is a big manufacturer, but I know that, outside of the U.S., there's a lot of big manufacturers of generic drugs. So I got to imagine there's just enormous logistical challenges that you have to deal with, national regulations, import restrictions, all sorts of kinds of things that you have to balance out to, bring these drugs to people at a low cost. Could you speak to that a little bit?
As a nationally licensed pharmacy, we maintain compliance with the requirements of the pharmacy boards of each and every state. So that's a process. Somebody starting today, it will take them almost 20 to 24 months to get all those licenses.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. That's why some people operate in a state or whatever, but national is a whole different ballgame.
Sure.
And in addition to that, to be an online pharmacy, there are additional accreditations to show that you're secure, that you can handle credit card transactions securely. There's a lot of HIPAA compliance requirements that we can maintain all of that. So that part we've done and, we've put in place, very successfully. The other part about the supply chain, it is a fact that I would say about more than 50, closer to 60% of all the generics consumed in the United States are manufactured overseas. This is a well-known fact. But our supply chain is no different than any other pharmacy, including big ones like CVS or Walgreens. Because whether it is foreign companies or even US companies, many of the larger ones, they have most of their manufacturing offshore, but all compliant with the FDA's requirements. So no matter where the facility might be, the FDA would have to go inspect them and approve them. And then they ship the product and import them into the US legally. So to clarify, as a pharmacy, we do not get involved in the importation process at all. That still is in the hands of the generic company. And they bring it to the US warehouse after, whether it's made here locally or it's imported legally with all FDA compliance. And they're required to certify that to us or any other pharmacy. So we still deal locally with the US offices and distribution centers of any of these companies that have FDA approved product. And from their warehouse, it comes over to our facility.
When we were talking before, we talked about, you're servicing uninsured and underinsured people largely. And we talked about the fact that you're not really taking insurance at this point. What you did say to me that I think is kind of shocking is that, for some people, some of the costs of these drugs is actually cheaper through you than it is through insurance with their copays and assorted things like that.
So our primary model on the consumer side is cash-based only. We don't accept insurance. That being said, we are making rapid strides into what we call the B2B side of the business. So we are talking to self-insured employer plans. We're talking to direct primary care chains of clinics. And we also have executed a couple of contracts with what is called transparent PBMs. These are PBMs who only charge an admin fee, but they're very transparent about the cost of the product to the payer. So these are all new evolving models that are trying to bring in more transparency and cost savings. And all of them are our allies, and we're working with them. So in those cases, they would process insurance, and we would be part of that activity. So just to say on the B2B side. When it comes to cash prices being lower than insurance, you'll be very surprised. It's very common. I've heard of a lot of people when they go to the pharmacy and they say, oh, your copay is going to be $20. They're like, wow, I'm already paying so much of a premium and, I have a high deductible. How much if I pay cash? And you'll be surprised. You could probably get it for like $8, just cash without using your insurance card. It's a common occurrence. Many people have told me about it. And in a variety of scenarios. I mean, even when my parents were visiting from overseas, from Asia, I had the visitor's insurance for them, and my mom, I had to take her to the urgent care for some problem with her foot. And the urgent care said, we said we have this traveler's insurance. They said, oh, you have to pay a $250 copay just for the visit, and then depending on what we need to do, we may charge you more. I said, well, this is supposed to be like top-notch insurance, and how much if I pay cash? They said $125. I just paid cash, walked out at half the price after getting the consultation. So you'll find many examples that cash price is lower than using insurance.
You rarely see an insurance company going out of business, right? And I think it seems like these employer healthcare plans oftentimes are more like coupon books than they are actual like a benefit, because it's sort of like, well, you get a little discount, like look at VSP or things like that. There's no real like benefit there. It's just they've negotiated discounts that you can participate in. It seems that like, I don't know the insurance industry that well, or the pharmaceuticals industry that well, but it almost seems like it's just every year they're paying for less.
That's absolutely correct. And one of the things that we are working on in that area is to change the conversation. Instead of going, price per product, we recently launched something called the annual savings plan. That's on the consumer side. And we have an even more robust version of that for the self-insured employer side that we will be launching later this quarter, called the Smart Pharmacy Plan. What that basically means is you get a large number of products. We have like 500 generic products in one tier, and we have 1,000 generic products in another tier. And we could also do other customized numbers for specific employer groups. You pay a fixed fee per month. That's it. Whether a person gets one script out of that or 10 scripts, you just pay that one plan price. Everything in that group is covered. There's no extra, no shipping fees, no hidden costs. And the second part of that, which will be ready before the new year as we go into the Jan 1 rolling out of many of these new programs, is we will also have a partnership with a digital discount card. So if it's any product that we don't carry, that employee can use the DiRx discount card and go to any of the local retail pharmacies and still get significantly discount prices. So we're trying to extend that and be very creative in how we give people more choices to access low cost at a capped monthly fee.
In the intro, I mentioned that you are looking to help out, kind of underinsured and uninsured folks. I mean, is this kind of like a personal mission for you to some degree?
You can say that. I mean, fortunately, I was never underinsured or uninsured.
Sure.
But I think it's just the ability to see both sides of the coin. When I know something costs a penny, and I know 40% of Americans, they are being charged, let's say, $50 for something that's a penny. Yeah. And that $50 is out of their reach. I feel bad. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. Yes, everybody needs to make a decent profit. Companies need to grow. I'm all for that. But the scale of adding cost has just gone way out of control. That's what kind of, really made me get towards this. Again, being from the generic industry, we're always about cost efficiency. How do we get that there? But at the end of it, somebody else is making it cost inefficient. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Chris, I don't know if you are feeling the same way I am right now about this conversation, but it sounds extremely familiar, doesn't it? So Chris and I are in the tech space, and what you've been talking about and describing is kind of hitting home because, and you tell me if this is what you're saying. I believe what you are saying is that the industry has had some legacy distribution channels, legacy best practices, and just legacy go-to-market. And what you're trying to do is change that go-to-market and make it more efficient and effective. Is that an appropriate way to generalize that a little bit?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, because if that is the case, here's the question that comes to my mind then. When you look at the legacy, the old school way of getting the farmers, the drugs out to the market, what was supposed to be the value of that supply chain? What was supposed to be the value of that distribution channel?
I think it was, when it started off, it was all very simple. In fact, I have met somebody who was involved in the very early stage of designing that system. And that person said, I don't know how I can make up for what a monster that has become now. So there it was very simple. It was more for competitive reasons. Nobody else should know how much somebody else is sourcing for. So there would be a reference price, but everybody would get their own discounts or rebates based on the volumes they buy. But then how over the decades, people have kind of misused that. So you used the word best practices earlier, right? So it started off as a best practice, and then it became a practice. And then it's anything other than the best now. So it's just, whatever you call it, corporate growth strategies or whatever. They're like, hey, let's try to milk this more and more. And then that whole reference price and the rebate got so far away from the real cost that everybody lost track of that.
It's definitely hitting home, because I think we're going through a similar kind of scenario where, it's like, where is the value? And we get so much of this is just the way it is. This is how we go to market. And then Chris and I will say that, but why? And the answer comes back as, well, this is the way we've always done it, and that is not an okay answer, especially these days, and this is an exciting conversation, because it's, as a person who takes medicine myself, I've experienced those big charges. I'm lucky that I can afford to pay them, to your point, right? I mean, very, very fortunate. I didn't realize that until I actually started having health problems. But I think you guys are doing a great service, and I'm excited to see what you guys are doing here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandesh.
When I mentioned in the intro, it's like, for a lot of people, it's a choice of, rent or survival, literally, So, the reducing drug costs is not a little thing to do. It's an extremely important thing to do these days. So that's got to make you feel good, going into work every day, I got to imagine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes the whole team. I mean, we have a really wonderful team, and everybody is very committed. That's what keeps them, getting up every day and getting back to work. It wasn't easy, because the whole system is geared to do it a certain way. So we had to kind of reinvent everything. We had to build our platform from scratch. We couldn't use anything off the shelf, because that would still connect to the main system. And so all of that. And now as we get into the larger scale B2B areas, again, people love the pitch. They see the value. We show them the analytics that we could save larger groups a lot of money. But then how do we unplug from the main ecosystem is kind of, everybody looks at it a different way, but it will happen, and it is happening.
So Satish, from that perspective, what's your biggest challenge right now in your growth? What is the big problem that you need to solve?
I think we've now established that we've created a better mousetrap. It's working, good proof of concept. On the consumer side, we've got very good traction. We've signed our first bunch of contracts on the B2B side. So going into Q1 2023, we'll start showing our presence there as well. So that took a little bit more time, because we don't have all the solutions, and to get people who are in the industry, especially with large groups, to come over. But I think we have started seeing the successes of getting through that now. We have our first few contracts signed, and there's more in the funnel. The other thing is funding. The industry has a very funny way of how things get funded. If you see many of the healthcare company funding, or the moment somebody's making a difference, guess who funds them? It's the big guys from the current system, right? They have their own venture arms. They come and show a lot of money at you and say, hey, we're going to fund you. And then eventually the whole story transforms. So that kind of money is easily available. But if you need to build it up from scratch, the traditional VCs, how do they see that? Again, there's so many different things going on. So that's we're constantly on a fundraising mode, let me put it that way. But the more people, we're doing it from individuals, from high net worth individuals, people from the industry. And we are getting to a scale where, very soon we will be going into some institutional conversations as well. But that's something, as a founder, keeps me busy all the time.
We've talked about some of the areas in which you're expanding, going into more of the B2B side and things like that. What else is next for DiRx?
We have a lot of strategic goals. I definitely personally want to solve something on the side of insulin, which is a huge national problem.
Please do. Please solve that problem. I don't take any, but I know people who do, and it's terrible.
No, the horror stories on that front are just so mind-boggling and makes us feel bad. So we are in some very interesting strategic conversations. It could take several months, but we are heading in the right direction. I think you mentioned EpiPens earlier. We are, kind of approaching it a slightly different way to see how we may make it cost-effective. We also realize that for many of the uninsured, they love our prices and they're able to come online and order. But when we contact their prescriber for a prescription, the prescriber says, oh, this person hasn't come and seen me for 9 months or 12 months. And until I see them, I can't write a prescription. And then the customer tells us, I don't have insurance. I can't pay $150 to see the doctor. So we do have some strategic ideas there. We could tie up with others in telehealth or even create an option within our own platform where a very low-cost cash-based telehealth visit, and if the doctor determines that they need a script, then that could be the next step. So we are thinking along those lines. We're not the first to do that. There are others who've done it.
Sure.
But that combined with the more cost-efficient supply of medication, I think will be a very good combination.
That sounds amazing. I hope you get there quickly, especially with the EpiPens too, because it's both my kids need EpiPens, and it's not like you just need one. You need like one for school, one for camp, one for home, one for their bag. I mean, they're wildly expensive, and and you also mentioned insulin, and the horror stories I have heard there. Just that's an important mission you're on there. So good luck with that.
Thank you. In fact, those are the bigger ones to crack, but I already had some successes. I can give you a couple of examples. So I'm sure you probably know someone in your friends and family network who need albuterol inhalers, especially some of them need it chronically, some of them need it, especially when, spring sets in and fall sets in when the weather changes. Those are expensive. I mean, I had somebody tell me a couple of weeks ago that just their copay with insurance is $80 for an albuterol inhaler.
Wow.
Guess how much we are selling an albuterol inhaler on our website for? $19 home delivered. That's among the lowest prices in the country you can find, even compared to retail where you have to go into the pharmacy. This is delivered at home for $19. So, if you know somebody, ask them to check it out. I'll give you another example. I think one of you mentioned earlier, Civica RX. And we welcome everybody who's trying to make a difference to the system. So, I commend them on that. But recently, their first launch of a product that they developed a facility for and got it approved. And they said, this is a drug called abiraterone. It's for pancreatic cancer. And they made a big press release, I think a month and a half ago, saying Medicare pays $4,000 a month for this product. Now Civica is launching it at $171 a month supply.
Wow.
Without insurance. Guess what? We went and checked. You can go check the DiRx website. We're already selling it at $160 without building a new plant and going through millions of dollars of investment. It's all about how you get that model right. And so we aim to do that for many more drugs.
Well, and it sounds like you can also do it on a prescription basis. So, like the $10 to $25 a month sort of option, could actually spread out some of those costs, I gotta imagine.
Yeah, those are specific drugs, yes. Okay. If you're within that category, you would get it. And then, we can keep adding more and different price points.
What you're doing is really important. So we wish you all the best in doing it, and can't wait to watch you guys grow. I'm gonna, go check out some of the drugs we've got in this house and see what the price point is. Even though I've got insurance, I think I might find some better options at DiRx. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you, Chris and Sandesh. Really appreciate your time and your interest. And let's stay in touch. Do go check DiRxHealth.com. And we have the annual savings plan. So you may be surprised, maybe for $10 a month, you may be able to get all of your drugs within the plan. So check it out, and wish you all good health.
I love it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, please take a moment and click that subscribe button. It only takes you a second, and it helps this channel a ton. And I will see you in the next one.